The unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 Myriakalpas. Now we can see and hear it. We can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddhist truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. So it's interesting to me that my topic that I had been working on for about a week or 10 days came to me, and I went, I don't know about this. And then I just sat with it and I went, I don't like that word. And I said, oh, I don't know about that one either. And then I finally said, well, I think you have to come up with another Dharma talk. This is not what I like to do. I like to plan ahead and be organized. Well, too bad for that. It just so happens what I'm going to be talking about a little bit is changing conditions. And I talk about the things that are what I'm working through, working about, know from firsthand experience about changing conditions. So my notes here are penciled and scribbled and all over the place, but I'm sure that you'll bear with me. So I did want to start with changing conditions, because I think that's something that we can learn from for sure, because one of the big teachings in our tradition is impermanence, and that means that, guess what, everything's always changing. And I find that it's a big topic, and Dogen really emphasizes to keep impermanence in mind. I think it's the great wish when we have our retreat in the meditation hall, that everything he says, keep impermanence in the foremost of your mind during that meditation retreat. So it's important. Why? Not because it's irritating and uncomfortable. Yes, that's part of it, but also because it's a great teaching for us as Buddhists. And what I like to think is it's not about an us and them. It's like we as a whole, everything's changing, including us. And sometimes we end up having to do something that we don't like. Fair enough. That's the nature of conditions. And one thing to look at is like the conditions, like falling leaves. We have to sweep up the leaves again and again and again. And sometimes you feel like the leaves are personally attacking us. Well, you can let that one go. I don't think they have that in mind, that they're out to get us, so they keep falling. And that's just what nature does. And that's what a lot of this stuff that comes up in our lives, it just does that. It's not like it's out to get us, okay? Even though sometimes it sure feels like it. But, if we look at that closely, we'll see that maybe that's not so. And what we can do with changing conditions is how we get ourselves involved and react to them. And this is where we get into trouble sometimes, is because we think that our reactions are they're not exactly helpful to our conditions. A response is a better way. I like that word because it means that instead of just reacting on the spot, you have a little bit of space, a little bit of breath, and you can bring that space and that breath to conditions. And then maybe you won't always make or I won't, speaking for myself, I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about. Don't make such a mess out of things. And by that I mean, oftentimes we're not making a big mess. It's just that something could have been done a little bit better. And I think one of the big lessons for a lot of us is to slow down. Take some time and not rush into every little thing so fast. And there are, this isn't across the board, you don't do this every single time. There are times when you need to respond to emergency situations. But most of the time, give ourselves a little bit of time and space. I mean, the space is available right here. We don't even know it. Enjoy it. Take it in. You're part of it. It's part of you. Okay. That's a good lesson for me. And what I was thinking about, when we do have a condition, and we judge it. We're real fast on that. I like it, I don't like it, I don't care. That kind of thing. And oftentimes what we will do is, instead of accepting our conditions, which is what the Buddhist practice suggests, we want to reach for something else. And it's what we're really good at. The mind just locks into something and we're not present. And what I have found what I found in writing, Buddhist writings, was that the distractions are there, and we're all prone to being distracted. Who's perfect about being in the present moment? I don't think too many people are. But if we get distracted, we're looking for something else that's going to make us happy. And the thing about that is, yes, something might make us happy for a brief moment. But guess what? It's subject to the law of impermanence, and it changes. And I have to, what was the story I was going to tell? Oh, like when you order something from, a mail order kind of thing, or you're going to buy something. So the anticipation and when's it going to be here? Am I going to like it? How come it's taking so much time? There's a certain amount of excitement there, but I find sometimes when I get the thing, I go, what's the big deal? It's like it's already gone, and it wasn't even the object that I was so focused on, but it was the getting of that. And even that was fleeting and, quite frankly, not very satisfying, because it doesn't last. So you can enjoy your perfect cup of coffee, but then it's gone, and then what? I don't know if you've experienced this, but if we have a really good dish or a good meal here, and I enjoy it, and I think, well, I'll go back for seconds. Somehow the seconds, they don't work quite like the first, so I was trying to reconnect with that first impulse of how wonderful this dish is, it's so delicious, and all that kind of stuff. Never tasted, So that's a clue. What is it we take refuge in? And of course, we can also, if we have an idea or we get distracted by something or something upsets us and we don't want to look at it, or we look at it, we're really good at making a storyline out of our head thinking that is convincing a lot of times, or disturbing, or, it just is helpful we do that, and it can get really carried away to an extreme. And I think only we are the ones that can make a judgment call on that kind of thing. So if it is too extreme, it gets really tight, really focused, and then after a while there's nothing else. That's just, that idea becomes your whole world. And that's just not simply true. That's not the reality of the situation. And it may not be a good thing to do. Oftentimes when we're thinking about things, it's because we want something to be comfortable. We want something we like. We want something that's pleasant, or we want something that's going to work out. And that kind of an idea is fair enough, but if we get too followed away, involved in that, it's like the self is trying to appease and make life okay. And I don't find that there's a fault in that. Life cannot always be wonderful. It has its moments, but it's not always okay. And what do we do in the Buddhist world? What is it that we practice that can help with this conundrum? Because it is a conundrum. No matter how much we try to make something different than what it is, sooner or later it comes back to you where you need to deal with it. That's the karmic, thing that happens. We can get distracted, we can push it away, we can get, all this, but that's a temporary thing. And there you are, back, hopefully sitting on your cushion, seeing the thing come up again and again. And I have found that I'm a little tired of my indulgence and my selfishness, that I'd like to say to myself when I do this, because this is my practice, maybe there's a better way. And so what I have found is, because I've been here a long time now, that meditation is really super helpful. For those of you who came for the intro retreat, most of us have been meditating for a long time. Once upon a time, I collected all the years that people that were here had been monks. And it came up to a collective like 400 years. And if you think about that in terms of experience of meditation, that says a lot about endurance, willingness, just the wisdom that comes out of that, all the stuff. It doesn't make us anything more than human beings, just human beings trying to do something a little bit different than engage in our selfishness, which is really can be a strong habitual tendency. The other thing I found is very much is the precepts, and I don't know if you all heard about that in your intro class yesterday, so you know a little bit about that. And that for me is a godsend. It's a wonderful thing because I can take refuge in the three treasures, which I do a lot, because after all these years, it's still very, very helpful. It clears my mind of the clutter of, I don't like this, I don't want to do that, that it just like, it's not like it cuts through anything, it's just opens things up, and it's okay, I can look at it with a different mind. So we get a bigger mind, a bigger view, and not so tight and hard, and that's another thing that will divide us from the universal quality of who we really are. And that's what we don't want. We don't want to be separated, divided from that which we truly are. Okay. And Dogen, when he went to China, he came back and somebody said, "What did you bring back?" And he said, "A soft and gentle mind." It wasn't that I was a great anything or I had super understanding, just a soft and flexible mind. Wouldn't that be a nice thing to live with? I think so. And I'm working on that. Now let's see, where do I go? I have to go back to my outline here. So one thing I found is that if we have the meditation practice and follow the precepts in the Buddhist teachings, that over time you can find that they're helpful. And this is not somebody's telling you they're helpful. You find they're helpful for yourself. In other words, what you're doing is you're finding a way that is really helping you out, and you can test it again and again, and it becomes something reliable. Like for me, I've done the three treasures for so long now, it's just part of who I am. And I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again because it makes a good point. And that is, I try to keep up with the news. I'm not crazy about that, but I do it. It's good to know. And so what I've done now is every time before I look at the news, I say, I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, I take refuge in the Sangha. And it doesn't make, it's not like I then have this shield of wonderful stillness between the news. I read it and I understand what's happening with the news, but I don't take it in quite like I did before. I don't get so upset about it. I recognize there's harm or not harm or good or whatever, but I don't get quite so upset. So in my mind, that's something I can use. That's a tool. And I use it, believe me. Okay, let's see here. Let me go back to my outline. Okay, this will be a pretty short talk, but here we go. I have a story. And it's true because I lived through it, and I'm still here. Let me just think here. So I went out to one of our hermitages a couple weeks ago, and one of the things, I was tired. I needed to get some extra rest, so I got some rest. But one thing I like to do is walk. And I find that some simple things are easy, like walking, sweeping leaves, drying the dishes, simple things you can bring to your daily life that are actually quieting. You can drop everything and just simply dry the dishes, and it's really a treat. I think some of the monks actually relish going into the kitchen and being able to dry dishes because they can really slow down and just do that one simple task. But I decided I like to walk. So I was walking through the forest at Compassionate Friend Hermitage, and I must admit I like to explore, so I did. And there's a great big hill there. I mean, not a little hill, but a big hill. It's not a mountain, but it's a big hill. And I decided that I wasn't going to walk up the road, but I was going to walk the way that I had done many years ago. Like I'd been there maybe 10 or 15 years, and I had walked up the hill on this one side. So I said, well, I'm going to go do that. But I was walking, simply enjoying it, and I would stop and I'd look at whatever, and pick it up and carry on walking, traverse the hill. And I was walking up and up, and I ran across, I was walking through the forest, and then I ran across this big band of manzanita. And then I thought to myself, well, the trees don't grow where the manzanita bushes don't grow where the trees are. Because I started to walk through the manzanita bushes, which are about like that high, and after a while I couldn't move, basically, because they're so hard to walk through. It's just kind of, you don't waltz, there was no grace in what I was doing, but I wasn't fighting with it. I was just thinking, is this a good idea? But then I saw some forest trees, and I thought, well, they don't grow underneath those forest trees. So I would find that spot, but then the manzanita completely surrounded that little spot. So I backed off, I walked down the road, or down the hill, and came back to the north side, thinking that it would have less manzanitas because they like sun. So I walked up a ravine, and then I walked up and I went, oh no, more manzanitas. And there I was, because I just couldn't make my way through them. I just couldn't do it. I tried, because I wanted to go to the top of the hill. And so what happened was I got to a point where I was high enough, and these manzanitas were a little different because I could see blue sky through them, at the bout of them. And I thought, oh, well, that's a clue. Maybe I'm coming to the top of the hill. So what I did was I said, well, that must mean, too, that the manzanita bushes aren't so thick. Yeah, right, good. Good luck with that one. So what I did is I walked up and I could see the blue sky, and I thought, oh, I'm going to make it. I'm going to find my way. And then I said, well, these bushes can't be that thick. But I started walking through them, and once again, I got stuck. I was poked. I couldn't walk through them, and I thought, what am I going to do now? I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. So I didn't turn around and go back. Sane thing to do, but I didn't do that. I said, what am I going to do? It wasn't like I had to get to the top of the hill. It was just more, it was a problem. What am I going to do? You're not going to believe this. So what I did is I just said, the bushes didn't open up, and I could walk through, nothing like that. But what happened? It embarrasses me to say this, but I looked down and I thought, well, the foxes and the coyotes, they walk through the manzanita. It's low. And I said, my problem is I'm too tall. So I got down on my hands and knees like an animal. And I crawled on my hands and knees for about 10 or 15 or 20 feet. And it worked. I had my pack on. It wasn't getting, snaggled and stuck. I wasn't getting poked and all that. And then what happened, where's Reverend Anya? Yeah, you'll love this, Reverend Anya. And so what happened is then I said, oh, God, I'm coming to it. It worked. I was being an animal. Went down, hands and knees. It was okay. Felt silly, but I said, this is working. And then I broke out, and I stood up, and I went, I made it. 5 feet in front of me, much to my surprise, was a Buddha statue. I could not believe it. I did not do this by design, Reverend Anya. There it was, this 5-foot tall statue, and I went, oh, I had no idea. So I thought, it wasn't like a message from God or anything, but I thought, wow, it was a surprise. And I went and I walked around, and it's an open space, and then I saw the bench there, And I sat down and I refreshed myself. You know, conditions, the Buddhist way. And I wouldn't say that, that's going to happen again or anything like that. It was a one-time thing. That's fine. But what it did for me was it just gave me a chance to rest, to be at ease with a Buddha statue. I mean, it couldn't ask for me. It couldn't have asked for anything more. And I just sat there for a while and just refreshed and said, thank you. What a surprise, So what I'm saying about conditions, we think we always know how they're going to turn out, and they're not going to always be like this, story. However, it did happen. And I don't discount that things like that haven't happened to a number of us in that way. And what does that do for you? It is encouraging for the Buddha's teaching to keep coming into me, to keep taking it in again and again. There's something there. We do get help. So I sat there for a while and I felt good. And then I decided, well, I'm going to go back down the road because that's what I had remembered. Well, there's all kinds of manzanita bushes there. And I said, I'm not doing that. Found the forest, got totally lost, but I was okay. And I found the road and walked back. And there I was. I had that experience and it was an adventure. I did not know, and I just took my time. I enjoyed the walk. It was really simple. And then it wasn't like I'm going to muscle through with these things. I just thought, well, I'll try this and I'll try that, just like we do, people do. And then I saw a way through, and down on my hands and knees I went. But I was so surprised. I stood up and I didn't see anything and went, there's a Buddha statue, and it was like, almost like right there. And I went, how did that happen? I had no plans. Anyway, it made me laugh. I thought you'd enjoy that, because she goes out there a lot. So that's what we have to work with, is ourselves, for good or bad. And what I find with that is that, where's the conclusion here? Is in our world, if we can find something, that we can, is reliable, some kind of teaching that really helps us out. To me, after a while, you can do it, and it's trustworthy. And that's a word that we just don't find too much in our world. But what we can find within ourselves is something that is trustworthy. And I find that it gives me hope. And it's doing the Buddhist practice, meditating, slowing down, taking the precepts, taking it to heart. This is not about an intellectual kind of thing. It's more about, here I am, and I don't know what to do. Help. Take the refuge in the Buddhas, in the Dharmas, and the Sangha. And there you go. You're just very still, and you can go, oh, I can do that quietly. Take the next step. And so this is called a work in progress in terms of my own experience. I am a work in progress, but I do have the wish that I wish to unfold the Buddha's teaching that I may help, all living things. And that's your talk. Thank you.